previous administration, I won't say names, the previous administration, then it kind of went away from the media. There was no continuation about it once Mr. Eric Holder was clean from all this mess. But it was a program from the United States that introduced on purpose very high caliber gangs to Mexico and ended up on purpose in the hands of drug cartels. That's one thing. The other thing is, what can we do to prevent the trafficking of gangs into Mexico from this country? Because I have heard stories, many stories on my daily work of immigrants who have been recently deported, who are kidnapped by drug cartels because they are not deported to their region where they are from. They are deported just to the border. Mm-hmm. They are caught right there, and then they are forced to go back and buy gangs for the drug cartels, or they will kill them or kill their families. If they are detained by border patrol agents and so forth and so on, if they tell that that's the reason they were carrying those gangs, they don't believe them. They have been victimized double, okay? Not only by sometimes very unfair immigration policies and the ways that these deportations take place, and the fact that there was no due process, no legal representation, but then they cross the border and they have absolutely no protection, and they are victims in like more vulnerable to be victimized by these drug cartels. So it's not like they are doing it because they want to. They are being threatened. And we have the case of Constantino Morales, who was looking refuge here in the United States, who was in deportation proceedings, who explained, if you deport me, you are sending me to be dead. And DHS didn't listen. Immigration didn't listen. Didn't listen to the community, didn't listen to anyone. And several months later, after his deportation, he ended up dead, just like he said. And it's not an isolated case. So what are you going to do? Because there are many issues that are in connection with immigration. Immigration shouldn't be looked as an isolated issue. It is connected to everything else. So what could you do to help or to address that intersection with the immigration issue?
Of drugs and gangs and immigration.
Yeah, yes, very good.
It requires constant tending, and it requires doing a number of things at the same time. One of those things is clearly a more open, transparent immigration system that allows for greater due process and the respect of the dignity of individual persons who are caught up in this challenge.
And about the gangs?
And about the gangs. That's interesting. We have had some success in working in this hemisphere in combating gangs. I think we could have more success. A friend of mine that does a lot of work throughout the hemisphere says, Martin, whenever I'm working on drugs and gangs and those sorts of interconnected questions in the United States, everybody wants to talk about drugs. And in Central America, everybody wants to talk about American guns.
Exactly.
So all of these things are very interconnected.
Governor, we have time for 2 more questions.
And then are we doing questions from here?
Yeah, we can have a little bit more conversation, and then we can take some questions from the folks in attendance. And then we'll
do you want us to stay here where the microphones are to take the questions, or do you want us to stand up and gaggle?
We can gaggle. We'll pull you to the back to gaggle, but
you guys know what gaggle is?
No.
It's not on like Google. In fact, you might want to Google gaggle.
Governor, if I can follow up just real quick, I don't need that, just real quick. You know, that's a great point, and I love the point. And we're talking about doing that like guns going to Mexico. How do we address that when we haven't stopped the guns reaching our children here in the United States, nor stop the drugs, from getting here? That actually, and unfortunately, helps immigrants come here that can't fit into the system, gives them alternative living source, making a living source. How do we stop? We can't stop it going abroad when we can't even stop it here in our own country.
Right. In our state, among the many things that we were able to get done, rather than just talking about getting done, was comprehensive gun safety legislation, with the banning of assault weapons, with fingerprints for background, mandatory background checks, closing gaps in terms of mental health. I believe that if we actually had comprehensive immigration reform, that we would be able to do a better job deploying our assets to interdict illegal narcotics than we are right now in this sort of ping-pongy back and forth brutal system with all of the detained people and minimum bed nights and everything else that goes with that. We also have a lot of assets that used to be in the Caribbean that are now deployed overseas in a different hemisphere rather than our own. And ultimately, we as a country need to do a much better job of preventing the sort of illicit trafficking in guns that continue to get shipped into South and Central America. A lot of work to do. Good Lord gives us no shortage of work to do.
Just a quick more
Does he, Pastor?
correct.